Hello everyone. Today I'm once again gonna be featuring the beefiest, the fattest, the thickest American Tier 10 battleship Vermont. And the reason is because, well, this ship has slowly started growing on me the more I've been playing this. Now, it's important to note that this matchmaking we have is, well, we have double Thunder, Borgonia, Slava on my team, and it's a carrier game. And the enemy has Conqueror, I think Thunder, they were in a division, and they got the likes of Hindenburg, Yoshino, and Shima, and of course they have a carrier as well. So the fact that we basically have no aggressive battleship whatsoever on our team. Thunder, Borgonia, Slava, Vermont. This means this is going to be a very, very passive game. And when I say we have no passive battleship, I include the Vermont in that. That's something you have to understand, is that the Vermont isn't an aggressive battleship. This is not a Kremlin. This is not an Ohio. This is not a ship that actually can push in for multiple reasons, and especially in a game with a carrier in it. But the biggest issue really is the lack of mobility, the lack of any sort of super heal or fast loading heal, and the incredibly poor concealment. You can see already early on, as soon as I'm detected, everyone wants to take pot shots at me. And this is common, because Vermont, when I see the Vermont, I like taking pot shots at the Vermont as well. It's got this huge freeboard that basically begs any AP shell being aimed at it to arm. It's slow, it's huge, it's an easy target. It's the easiest free farm damage ever. And especially Conquerors and Thunders absolutely adore farming this thing. And when I play those ships, or any HE spammer like a Yoshino or Hindenburg, whatever, I love shooting the Vermont as well. So what you need to understand is the Vermont, despite having over 100,000 health, and supposedly despite having good armor, the Vermont is not in fact a tanky ship, and it is not in any way an aggressive ship. It is quite a passive sniper. But once you realize that, and once you basically embrace and acknowledge that, you can see what my positioning here is doing. Obviously, I love going for the central positioning. Especially early on, before I've been stripped of my AA by the Conqueror or the Thunder. With defensive AA, the carrier doesn't really want to strike me that much. Obviously he can strike me and he can deal damage to me, but there are much juicier and easier targets for him to drop than a Vermont with all his AA intact. Generally Vermont can push, but it's later in the game. But early game, I like just taking a spot in the center and looking for anyone doing something silly. And in World Warships, there's 12 potential players on the enemy team that can do something stupid, and once you catch them out, the Vermont is very good at punishing them. Sadly, the Slava is even better. You could see his shells landing before me, but regardless, I do finish off what the Slava started, and the Yoshino gets killed, which is one significant HE threat deleted. But this general playstyle of just acknowledging the fact that you don't want to push anywhere. And the reason why you don't want to push anywhere is, well, once you even slightly engage the enemy, you cannot disengage in the Vermont. Vermont sucks at disengaging from a poor fight. So you have to be extra careful. I would in fact even say something like a Borgonia is more aggressive, capable of playing more aggressive than a Vermont. Because a Borgonia can play aggressive on a flank. Hindenburg not having fun with that match, by the way. Something like a Borgonia can play aggressive on the flank, and if in trouble, the Borgonia can disengage from that flank. Vermont, if you play aggressive and you're even slightly staying your welcome, you will lose all your health trying to disengage. You will in fact see a pretty crazy example of just how vulnerable this ship is under enemy fire. Right now though, I kind of like my position. I'm slowing down, which obviously in the Vermont means that we're basically crawling along. But I'm kind of in the center of the map, and I have plenty of targets to shoot. And there's not really much point for me to push anywhere, because if you look at my Thunders and Borgonias and so forth, well, they're kind of sitting just as far as back as I am. So if I try to push in, I become the prime target for all the HE spammers. So right now, we're doing fine. We should be capping D, so I'm just gonna be looking for these potential targets to fire. It's kind of surprised me that a ship like Vermont, I found it plays very similarly to something like a Slava. Poorer reload, more guns, overmatch, less pen and so forth, but fundamentally very much you kind of want to play a fairly passive role early on. And that's because, well, at least the Slava can to some extent angle damage. Vermont, as I mentioned in my commentary, you can't angle a circle. But it does have these guns, and these guns are filthy. In fact, if you look at the damage, we're we're what, 5 minutes 30 into the match, and we have 112k damage on the board. Vermont guns are brutal, and this is a full tier 10 matchmaking example, and it just shows just how much damage you can pump out in this thing. Obviously, I'm hoping to proc Halsey's Confederate, so I'm kind of going from target to target to target, because that extra reload really helps me out. Hoping that Moskva might turn a bit to the right, but I think he's actually going to go in a straight line. Shooting behind the islands is always sketchy in World of Warships. And somehow the shells actually end up landing a bit high. I'm not sure how that works, but as I mentioned, shooting over islands, especially the first volley in World of Warships, seems to always be a bit wonky with the targeting. We lose our gearing, which is unfortunate, as they still have 2 DDs alive, but I know exactly where the DDs are, so I'm going to see if I can maybe try to support our Shimakaze here and close the distance a bit, especially since it looks like both my Thunders and Slava are reversing even further. And while I understand playing fairly passive, because we don't really have any sort of offensiveness, I worry that our backline is backing off too much, and that's leaving our battleships vulnerable. So I'm trying to push in, basically assert a bit of map control, because even the Thunders and the Conquerors on the enemy team look like they are going to start playing more aggressive. And that's something you really never want to let them do. If we allow them up to the islands, where they can take pot shots over the islands, we're going to be in trouble. Puerto Rico contests the cap. I go for a basically perfect waterline shot on him. I predict he's going to reverse, and I go for a perfect waterline shot where he's reversing. But as I mentioned, shooting over islands in World of Warships is a very wonky business indeed, and somehow basically my entire volley lands short, besides 2 overpens. So, I mean, there are people who still pretend like there's not a shooting over island bug, but let's just say I strongly disagree with these people, because in my opinion, shooting over islands is one of the wonkiest features of World of Warships. Regardless, we do manage to get C thanks to our Shimakaze contesting it, and I'm gonna see if I can close the distance close enough to actually be able to punish the Thunder and the Conquer. Because as I mentioned in my commentary, this ship actually has quite good pen. The AP actually has even better pen than Ohio, which means that if you catch these fairly thinly armored, and more importantly, the ships that have this very flat plating, like Conquer and Thunder, you can absolutely citadel them. The downside, of course, of closing in is, as I mentioned, you become the favorite target of these ships. As soon as you close the distance, well, you can see the HE spam starts. You're not going to be able to take those shots for free. They will absolutely start focusing you, and under that HE spam, you're a very easy target. I've been undetected for a while, and they're basically still landing where I'm sailing. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to go for these shots. Considering I have the option to disengage, I do still want to try to punish them, because if I even can remove one of them from the equation, this game will become much easier. And Thunder is giving me far too much broadside at 21 kilometers, and he gets deleted off the server. 3 citadels, it would probably have been more, but the 3rd citadel actually caused him to detonate, which basically means his entire health pool got evaporated, and now we have a solid 220k damage before we're even 9 minutes into the game. Encouraged by this, obviously I want to keep trying to push here and keep trying to punish his teammate, the Conqueror, as well. I think he might have slowed down a bit more than I expected. It's hard to tell, he's moving so very slowly. Obviously, I want to punish him with citadels as well, but he's full stopped, and that actually throws off my aim, and I lead too much on him. And because of course, Conqueror's fantastic stealth, he does manage to go dark. We're still down to a 6 versus 7 or 7 versus 6. The Shimakaze gets spotted in our spawn. I'm very tempted to shoot the Conqueror, but he's already starting to angle away, and more importantly, I would really like that Shimakaze to die. The Shima is actually perma-spotting me, and he does get detected. At this point, I have to abide by my age-old rule, which is always shoot the destroyer. Because if that DD takes out our carrier, if my team ignores him, we might be in serious trouble. So I'm pinging him, trying to get my team to shoot him, and I'm gonna shoot him myself as well. The Shima is making a mistake. Instead of torping us battleships, instead of spotting for the team, he's getting too hungry and he's overextending into our spawn. So obviously I'm gonna do my absolute best to delete him. Not quite enough lead, but our carrier actually drops some fantastic torps and catches him with those, and he doesn't have any sort of smoke by the looks of it, so he will be going down. So I switch back to AP, and my next target will be this Moskva. He's nose in, But of course, if you get enough of an angle, you can actually punch through the nose of the Moskva. Basically, because of the way the nose curves in, you can potentially pin him at these slightly wonkier angles. Conqueror goes dark, Moskva goes dark. Kaba is actually taking pot shots at me. I'm gonna throw an AP volley at him. Trying to get rid of him because he's basically my last stop to making any sort of push happen. As long as the Kaba is around, I don't have any chance of pushing through here because, well, Kaba doesn't really have too much trouble YOLOing a Vermont. And the reason for this is because the Vermont is so painfully slow that he can easily pick me off with his torpedoes. Even though his torpedoes are basically garbage, Vermont is such a vulnerable target. I'm down to 2 heals, burning again. Basically that's what you tend to do quite a lot in the Vermont whenever you're spotted. People love shooting you and people just love setting you on fire. However, we have accomplished the angle that I wanted, and that is getting enough of that broadside on the Moskva. Aiming for a waterline. First volley. Surprisingly, all lands short. I don't really understand how that sometimes works, but I aim a bit further back and I do catch him with a Citadel. Not quite enough to get the kill, just short, but I do get my hit hard from Halsey, which of course gives me that boost to reload. Now I feel encouraged. It's time to start pushing in. It's time to start playing more aggressive if possible. My heal is just about to come off cooldown, and I'm hoping that maybe we can be close enough that we can actually fight the Conqueror. Conqueror in general deals with you very, very well. You have to, like, Conqueror and Thunder are ships that just counter you so well. As long as they don't give broadside like that guy did, as long as they just angle and they just HE spam you to death so very quickly because, well, they don't care about your armor, you're an easy target, you have poor concealment, you can't outrun them. You are in every way a Conqueror's and a Thunderer's favorite target, and you need to play like that. Despite our, in my opinion, fairly passive positioning this game, we're still down to what? 48k health and only 1 heal remaining. And here you really get an example of just how bad that freeboard is on this Vermont. I have 49,000 damage. I kind of want to turn my guns around, and I figured if the Kaba is here, well, it's just a Kaba. Kaba doesn't really have that impressive of damage, like, what's the big deal? So we're 48.5k health, and the Kaba actually slows down to take this fight, and I'm like, are you serious? In a Kaba? That's not a very good idea. I already chunk him for 7,000 damage, and at this point I decide, well, I don't dare push in case he's torpedoed, so we're gonna try to turn out and at the same time get our back turrets in. Note that this ship turns very poorly, but this exposes this huge freeboard. And suddenly that 49,000 health that we had, well, if you look at the damage I'm taking, you might actually be pretty blown away by it. You gotta remember, this is a Kaba. This is not one of the highest DPM ships by any means. This is just a Khabarovsk, but because of this freeboard arming every single AP shell and giving him this huge pin damage, I'm down to below 10,000. I'm down to below 9,000. In fact, I'm burning, almost burning to death because that Kaba shot a bit of AP at my broadside. Down to 6,000 health we went, and I literally kind of had to disengage so I don't get myself killed, and I'm gonna be forced to pop my last heal. That was 42,000 health gone that quickly against a ship that doesn't really have that good of a DPM like the Khabarovsk. So that really puts into perspective if that would have been something like a Hindenburg or something like a Des Moines or whatever shooting AP, the Vermont just melts instantly. The health pool on this ship is a lie. That's basically the point I'm trying to make. The health pool on this ship makes you think that this is a tanky ship, but it's not. It is ridiculously squishy. It is probably one of the squishiest tier 10s, one of the most vulnerable tier 10s in the game. And anytime you give any sort of broadside and they shoot AP, your broadside basically guarantees it's going to be full pens. Every volley full pens. And Hindenburgs love this. Like, you haven't really enjoyed World of Warships until you have loaded AP in a Hindenburg against the broadside Vermont. Like doing plus 10k plus per volley. Actually more than that. So doing 15k AP on a full broadside and just doing it over and over and over again. The ship just evaporates. So my point really this game is that trying to just emphasize that the gunpowder is great, but do not by any means be fooled by the health pool. Vermont is not a tanky ship. It can be tanky 1 versus 1 against people that shoot AP if you manage to angle against them, but against HE spam, so vulnerable, caught broadside on by even something as ridiculous as a Kaba, not tanky at all. Trying to go for some blind fire as we lose vision of the midway. He's last seen heading somewhere this way, and as I say in my blind fire guide, well, it's always worth going for that shot, and I do manage to catch him with a Citadel, despite the absolutely ridiculous range and travel time of these shells. I predict his following moves as well, and I throw in another few volleys, really trying to break that 300,000 damage. The shells, hopefully, potentially, might look good. No, they land... Oh, and you saw where he died? He actually died exactly where I was blind firing. With slightly better dispersion, that might actually have been my midway kill. Sadly, that does not happen, and we don't break 300,000 damage, but this game was still once a good example of things I really like about the Vermont, which is the guns are filthy. Like, these guns, the more I use these guns, the filthier they feel, and in the new upcoming Commander rework, Vermont with Deadeye is going to be completely ridiculous. Like, imagine 10% better dispersion on this broadside. That's just filth. That's what it is. So, 295,000 damage, Confederate, high caliber and first blood, and in terms of tankiness, of course, dreadnought and fireproof. Not surprising, we got fireproof. As mentioned, people love setting you on fire, and this is with fire prevention and with fire reduction skills, so do not be fooled into thinking this is a particularly tanky ship. 10 citadels, 3 kills. Team score wise, we do break 3.1k. Actually, it's 3.2k rounded, so that's a pretty solid performance from the Vermont, and we of course turn it into the win, which also very, very nice. If we look at detailed report, well, 8 HE shells on the Kaba and 67 AP shells landed out of 204 shot. Potential damage 1.3 million. Amusingly, 52,000 spotting. Considering there's a carrier and I'm a Vermont, I'm somewhat amused that I got 52,000 spotting, because once again, I didn't feel like I was playing particularly aggressive. And damage received, of course, 166,000, which I think is about as close to the maximum you can get in this thing. I think I had a bit more health to burn at the end, like maybe about 20k health left, but we kind of maximized our healing utility this match. And 79 HE shells, and a bit of AP, but obviously the fires are the big culprit. I didn't even suffer through any double fires. This was just single fires, and that's the thing. You get spotted, people shoot you, you get set on fire. That happens all the time in this thing. That's just something you have to deal with. But even with these downsides, that 84.6k damage on that Thunder was absolutely hilarious and a great example of what these guns can actually pull off. I can show you my recommended build. Actually, I think my recommended build is the exact same as in my previous Thunder vid, so that hasn't changed. More importantly, the new Commander rework is coming on Thursday, so obviously I will be playing that on my stream, and I will be trying to make some early captain guides on exactly what I recommend. Let me actually check. Yes, I am actually running the exact same build as I'm running in my previous tier 10 battleship commentary, and that includes, of course, William Halsey for that Confederate reload buff. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the commentary and the game, and if you do feel like dropping a sub, I do appreciate it. I'll talk to you next, guys. Next time, I'll talk to you next, guys, and more than likely it's gonna be in the form of some sort of commander guide, because there's a whole lot of stuff to dig into. Anyways, see you guys later.